Today I'm showing you a foolproof, no-fail, step-by-step recipe for successful chiffon cakes, and I'll tell you guys some tips on how to prevent the batter from deflating and how to keep your cake fluffy like bakery sponge cakes. So start by sifting 65 grams of cake flour, and all the cup measurements will be listed in the description box. Make sure you sift the flour at least 3 to 4 times to get rid of any lumps. Now let's separate 3 eggs. You can do this by transferring the egg yolk from one shell to the other shell and let the egg white fall into a big bowl by itself. Put the bowl with the egg whites into the fridge until later. Now put the 3 egg yolks in a separate mixing bowl and whisk it for 20 seconds to loosen the yolk a bit. Next, adding 10 grams of white granulated sugar and whisk as much as you can until the color turns to a pale and looks like mayonnaise. Next, you want to drizzle in 35 grams of oil as well as 50 grams of milk. Whisk each in gradually until the mixture looks liquidy. You don't want the oil nor the milk to separate. Then add the sifted cake flour and mix until just combined, and it should look like a cake batter. Now we're going to make the meringue. First, prepare 45 grams of white sugar. And tip 1, your egg whites need to be chilled, so that's why we put it in the fridge. Now let's start beating it. Turn on low speed and beat for 1 minute until you see large big bubbles, and that's when you want to add a splash of white vinegar and 1/3 of the sugar. After 2 minutes, there will be less large bubbles but still look foamy, and that's when you want to start to add the sugar gradually from time to time. Just sprinkle in a little bit, then beat for a couple seconds before sprinkling in more. Lastly, after 1 minute, as you can see here, the egg whites have become a little bit droopy and kind of doubled in volume, and the bubbles have looked finer. That's when you want to add the rest of the sugar. You can see that there's much less or no bubbles at all, and the egg whites are starting to look very fine in texture. After 2 minutes, when you lift the beaters, it should look droopy and it has some very small bubbles. Tip number 2, during this entire beating process, make sure you beat in one direction, so either clockwise or counterclockwise. And tip 3, when beating, use only small to medium speed so that the meringue will be more stable and finer in texture. After another 2 minutes, the egg whites won't be droopy anymore. As you can see, there are ripples as I'm beating it, which means the egg whites are starting to take shape and becoming stiffer. So just like what you're seeing here, the egg whites aren't droopy anymore. So keep on beating, and after 5 minutes, the egg whites should now have a soft peak, and this is what I mean by soft peak. When you lift the beaters, the peak should have a curve but not droopy. So as you can see here, the peak has a little bit of a curve, and that's called soft peak, but it's not droopy at all. Finally, you want to beat for 4 minutes, and you'll see the egg whites start getting stiffer, and eventually it'll transform into stiff peaks, and that is what you want. Tip 4, the meringue should look really glossy at this point and feels almost like whipped cream. If it looks lumpy, then it's overbeaten and it is not good. Here's what stiff peaks look like. You can see both peaks are standing up straight and is not curvy or flimsy at all. It also has a shine to it. And flip the bowl over and check if the meringue does not fall. If it doesn't, then that means you've done everything right. So once you've got to this point and the egg whites have been beaten really well, then that basically means that your cake will turn out successful. Now back to the egg yolk batter. Take 1/3 of the egg whites and fold it in with a spatula. When folding this part, you don't have to be too cautious. Just fold and rotate the bowl until both the egg whites and the yolk batter has been combined into a homogeneous mixture. Right now is a good time to preheat your oven to 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Now pour that entire thing to the remaining egg whites and finish folding. Now here's the folding technique. You want to cut down the middle, swipe and lift. So cut down the middle, swipe and lift. So it's almost like writing the letter J. Keep rotating the bowl every time you do a fold. If you see any lumps of egg whites, then you need to keep folding until the batter is completely smooth and has no lumps. And as you're folding, you want to be a little bit gentle with it if you're a beginner. So folding in a J motion is very important because the egg whites that you've just beaten does not deflate, because you want the egg whites to keep its compactness and volume, and you'll feel that volume and compactness as you're folding it. If you do, then that means your batter is great. Now when everything looks combined just like this, you want to give it the last few scrapes, and the batter should now look very velvety and smooth. It should be nice and thick. It's not supposed to be liquidy. You can feel it has a lot of air in it, like I just said, which means the batter will not deflate. And that's the chiffon cake batter. You can use this to bake it in a cake pan or a tube pan, and this is also how people make Japanese souffle pancakes. Basically, if your egg white is beaten really well to the right stage, then your batter will not deflate. I've said that 300 times already, basically the important factor. Today I'm making big and mini cupcakes, so I used a cookie scoop to fill the cupcake liners all the way to the top, or 3/4 of the way full. Now bang the pan on the counter 3 times, then you can go ahead and bake it in a preheated oven at 340 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. As you're baking, the cupcakes will rise up and look puffy, but when you let them cool, they will sink, meaning that they will not look puffy, and this is completely normal. You want to just let it cool all the way, and then you're all done. So for the decoration, I prepared some matcha or green tea whipped cream, and what I've did is just pipe that onto each of the cooled cupcakes. This looks super adorable and cute. I just love how you piped that whipped cream on top of these cupcakes. And so here are my super yummy matcha whipped cream chiffon cupcakes. Believe it or not, it is seriously so fluffy and soft like a cloud. The texture is perfect. It has that firm yet fluffy structure to it. They're just like cakes, light and airy sponge cakes. So definitely please give this recipe a try and let me know if you love them as much as I do. Again, like I said, it's very indescribable and you do not know how good these are until you try them.